Here we are with another Untold episode, another Untold story. Ahmed, how do you feel about today?
Today is going to be interesting. It's
Dramatic.
a little bit into my field than
Yes,
yours.
it is.
But we're going to have a insightful conversation.
I learn a lot,
A
honestly.
man with multiple talents.
Yeah.
His resume goes on and on, especially in theater.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily my world, but it's still going to be a very interesting chat.
A lot of
That's-
awards,
yeah.
perhaps, to touch on.
Also, as well.
I'm interested to see how can he shift
he's-
between the different
yeah.
roles, honestly. It always interests me. Anyway,
We're going to find out
Shall
some
we?
more right after this.
we're back from the break and we can finally talk to Hamad AlJenaie.
Yes.
Hamad, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me in your
Welcome
show.
on the show.
It's very exciting
Thank
having someone that definitely does a lot of things and quite a bit of things. And I think it's very interesting to start the conversation with what is, in brief, of course, because I know it can be very long. What's the brief untold story of Hamad?
Well, been in the industry for nearly 15 years now, theater and such.
Theater field.
Theater skill,
Okay.
craft and all.
Okay.
From a very young age, starting from high school forwards and a couple of plays here
Did
and
you
there.
start acting in high school?
It was kind of like an activity at
Yes,
first, like,
an
like an
after-school
after-school
activity.
activity.
Kind of like a society or a school.
What sparked that interest into acting in the first place? The very
Well,
beginning.
when you have friends around, there are two things that they're more interested in, either sports or
Right.
some kind of like
Yeah, the arts are
music and
kinda
a band.
looked
And
down
it's kind of
upon,
like down
right?
at beginning,
yeah.
yeah.
It requires a lot of courage.
You talk
Yes.
about the mid '90s and such. I was about
Yeah,
six,
it
7 at
still
the
is
time.
looked down upon, but even back then.
That's
you know?
right. That's right.
Yeah.
And one of my friend who is a dear and still till today,
Yeah.
of course, told me to come and join this drama department. So I
Yeah.
said great, and they had a production of Aladdin.
Aladdin.
Nice.
Yeah, Aladdin.
Were you the
So-
genie?
You can say that actually. I was not the lamp genie. I was the ring genie.
The
Were you
The
ring
ring,
genie?
the ring genie. So I didn't know they were the different. But anyhow.
Yeah, I didn't know there were two genies. But
That
okay.
was so surprised.
Yeah.
So okay, we had to go. I thought it was a bit of fun, just with a couple of friends. We're just doing like 10, 12 of us
Yeah.
working on a project, and then suddenly, as I was on stage, and I suddenly felt this kind of strong, present energy.
You loved
There
it?
was- It was kind
felt
of
it
Did
just
that.
you have the stage fright at the beginning?
At first,
At
yes,
first?
there was a lot
Okay,
of
butterflies,
nervous wreck,
goosebumps?
butterflies in the stomach, goosebump, all kinds. Just
But
thinking
you
about it.
loved that live theater reaction.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. But that didn't actually. I thought, okay, that was great experience. Time to leave, work on other activities. Suddenly, I had this English teacher with mine who passed away recently, Jane Merriman, who was a very dear friend, and I still keep in touch with her family and all.
Yeah.
She presented me this kind of like a Shakespeare text, which
Okay.
is Julius Caesar,
Julius
as a part of the class course. And she said each one of us to come up on the center just to say these outline the words.
Okay.
auditions.
It's like a
more
cold
like
read.
A cold read. you know,
Cold
but
read,
like
yes.
in front of the line, but
Yes.
say those words out. I was nervous. I said, I don't think it's going to be a good idea. So she insists me to come run in the center, so I did. It was a scene from Mark Antony, Friends, Romans, Countrymen. So that was like the first expression suddenly came towards it. And I read out loud, and she said, no, loud and clear. Enunciate. Okay. I said, fine. Okay. And I did. And that's where the light bulb struck.
Ah,
Why?
what happened?
That something about those words you read, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I was like, I couldn't figure out what, but something just spoke to me, clicked in a way.
And what was the aha moment? What happened? What's the realization?
I was just fascinated with the words, actually.
How they move a
How they
character,
move the character.
how you
Nice.
evoke emotion from
Absolutely,
the viewer.
absolutely.
Because I'm sure you had to scream it out. How did you say it? Did you have to scream it out?
It was much of like trying to find your inner voice, trying to find your ability
Yeah.
while saying this word. Because I had a trouble talking as a child because it's just much later. Not
Yeah.
I don't want to terms of stutter, but more like don't know how to approach.
Yeah.
So the show gave a great example because I didn't have so much of line, just saying characters, but for the speech of Shakespeare, it was like something completely turned on.
Yeah.
And the same year, 97, at Shamia Theatre, I remember, they had a play on as a touring production, a Swedish production of the Scottish play Macbeth.
Oh my
Okay,
God!
wow.
Wow.
97. So my aunts, who are English literature teachers
Yeah.
back in India at the time, invited me along with others just to get the feeling of the theater. So a Shakespeare text, as we say, on stage, which I did. I went and I thought, okay, at the age of 10, 12, about then, teenager, interesting. And then when The Witch started coming in, I thought, my God, something in that present felt like, I have to do this. I had to do something like that. That where suddenly, like, finally went through every library,
Yeah.
bought a copy of Shakespeare's text
You
or
fell in
books,
love.
fell in love suddenly about his story, his telling from King Lear, Hamlet, and Midsummer Night's Dream. It grew onto me much later. But the funny thing is, I thought there was no career for that at first, because at the time it's like it's either to business,
Yeah.
or lawyers, and doctrines. So great,
Yeah.
fine, family and all. I thought that's it's fair, and that's why I went into university. And there I met with Alice and Sean Price,
Okay.
who was running at the time, was Baya, then went to One World Actor Center. She casted me in one of her production called The Dream Dealer back in 2007.
So the journey really took you with it. Like you fell in love with it. Can we say by coincidence?
Fade away for a while.
Yeah.
For a
But then
bit.
you kind of went back on track.
Yeah. But it keeps on calling back many times and many times
Yeah,
and
yeah.
many times. And I always try to take away from that spotlight, because the feeling didn't really dawn on me till much later. When I met her, she gave me the key on the method, the back of what these mythologies and what is Stanislavski method and what is Michael Chekhov's method, what are the Brecht, the
So these are experts. These are level up.
level up practitioners,
Okay.
Tawfiq al-Hakim,
Okay,
Saad
okay.
Faraj, different kinds from Western to
Nice.
Eastern practitioners. And then we had our first ever Shakespeare performance, which I was cast as Iago in Othello, which is kind of like the opposite. The Iago is the kind of the villain, one of the interesting character ever been played. The one who brings destruction of his boss Othello, his boss's marriage, and the people around. Basically, the cunning guy. So I thought he was the cool that people wanted to be. So I said,
Okay.
great. We did it at the British Embassy, 2008, something like that. So it was a great experience.
Must have been
and
tough.
It was a challenge.
That was a big challenge, yeah.
Because you're playing an iconic character, which is
Yeah.
like opposite Othello, which is played by a dear friend of mine, Augusta Tachancho, is now an Australian actor,
Oh.
just coming out of a Tina the musical, premiering very soon.
Okay.
Nice.
Australian play. All
Okay.
right. And then I thought that was a great experience, amazing. Starting going through, then she introduced me to Lambda, which is the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, where you can do your examination, where you can
Nice.
work your way through monologues, dialogue, characters, background, which is now the president is Benedict Cumberbatch,
Oh,
best known for
wow.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse. So
Absolutely,
he's
yeah.
now the president of Lambda, which
Nice.
from Alison to me came quite a shock. I said, all right, great.
Nice.
All right, what's that got to do with me? So that's fine. And that was it. And then she introduced me to a director kind of showcase, because there was one point in the group course we were studying that she said, oh, can we try you doing a scene from a comedy or anything particular?
Okay.
And I did a great, all right. And I gave them a little bit of a demonstration and all. Then she said, you should try a bit of like a broad showcase.
A broad showcase.
Yeah, it's more like
In terms of.
international
Oh,
with your
okay,
skill
okay.
with other competitors.
Yeah.
From India, from Germany, from Paris, London, so forth. So, and half an hour piece from a Shakespeare text. So we thought of the idea for Measure for Measure.
What does that mean? Sorry. What do you mean measure for measure?
Measure is one of those problematic plays.
Okay.
It's very complicated plays. Basically, a man who is taking control of a country, all right? And it's like a huge conflict, and it's not as popular, but has this theme. But I found it quite fascinating of subduction and some kind of the Puritan kind of quality. And I thought that was a great, interesting concept. We were shortlisted for the top 10 greatest international in 2010, 12.
Success after success ever
Success
since
after success,
the mid 90s, as you said. I love that. I love that how everything is building to your favor ever since then.
Mashallah. It was in that journey
Yeah.
point and just received the Lambda gold medal for distinction in acting
When was
mime
that?
and musical, which is like a distinction terms like the highest grade for
Okay.
an examination O level G level of drama institution to do an Lambda.
So I want to ask, so did you win these things because of the vast experience you've had before and how you've acted? Like you've acted in comedy and a lot of drama, a lot of other roles. And I'm not into theater myself, but like I know for a fact how challenging it could be.
That's right.
Not just playing a role, but playing a different genre altogether. So when you're asked to do a comedy role, I mean, how do you make that shift in terms of from something so dramatic, Shakespeare, and suddenly to something so comedic?
That's a great challenge. It all started from a script. Find the character, you get the voice. There's a very old term said, talk the talk, then walk the walk.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So if you're capable and find the right rhythm of that character, especially the voice,
Yeah.
and you get the movement, comes much later. And we've done that. I mean, we studied character developments, we taken bits and pieces from other methods
Yeah.
onwards, and a great journey, multiplying character, which why once I played like 5, 6, 7 characters at once.
That's crazy,
Which
wow.
is quite at the same, we had about 60 minutes just changing non-stop.
That must have built something in you then.
It grew suddenly. I never expected that from the time of the high school production of
Yeah.
Aladdin, suddenly to with Alison and becoming one of her international representative student
Nice.
of the One World production. And then came across the idea of what is it like to be part of the backstage, which I find it most fascinated me.
Nice.
Whereas how the development stages started.
like
Where did
All that mess that happens at the back and how suddenly people see this art piece in the front.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. This is where we felt that something was quite extraordinary, especially with the youngsters and students who were involved. And I said, would it be interesting to me to be part of something to create as a project? And she said, great. And what you had in mind? In 2013, we had a huge space, like we had nothing to do with. This was October. It's a great Halloween event taking place.
Yeah.
So I said, why not a ghost story example? So there was this production just performed. It was in London for nearly about 20, and it's just recently closed after 35 years of run.
Okay.
Called The Woman in Black, a ghost story by Susan Hill. And it was a 2-actors play.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it in London back in 2010. And I came across Alice and said, why don't we take that and bring it to Kuwait and just take a new structure of that?
Yeah.
And we did, and she said, great idea. We got 2 actors in it. We had a Kuwaiti actor and we had a British actor, who were involved in the play. We could not tell who was the woman. That was the biggest secret. It's like, that's the idea. Is like, was there ever such thing as the woman in black?
Yeah.
You know?
And that was where again?
As my directorial debut
Okay,
came along.
not in Kuwait. We're talking.
No, it was in Kuwait.
In Kuwait. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
in
fair
Kuwait.
enough.
With this
Directorial debut in theater play?
A theater play.
Theater play.
Yeah.
And you've done some film and other works, right?
That's right. We cut short films as such. I worked with my brother on his Al-Fajr, which is part of the Wazarat al-Shabab kind of thing in 2017, something like
Okay.
that. So
I think there's definitely way more to talk about.
I wanna pause for a second, and
Go
we'll
for
go
it.
for a break. But when
Yeah.
we come back, we want to talk more about wearing multiple hats in the industry, being creators, as producers, writers, directors,
Absolutely.
all that.
And
We're gonna
go for
touch. Yeah, we're gonna touch on that right after this.
absolutely.
And we're back, and we're continuing this beautiful conversation with our director, writer,
How many?
producer.
How long is the list?
How many
honestly?
hats do you wear?
It's endless,
Endless
timeless.
list. So how do you
Abyss.
manage? Tell me how you manage.
Well, it was right after Woman in Black in 2013, where we were surprised by the reaction of the audience and how much we took into that. Because the funny enough, that theater had no lights, had no kind of sound. We have to create from scratch, which I really enjoyed when it comes to have no kind, just a bare stage, and we just decided to build around it. That was, again, as a producer, that's where it started to pick up how to bring the product all together,
yeah.
how to design certain image for the
How to produce
the
the show.
producer's show.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest starter point. And great, it was a great experience. Loved it so much. Then after that, we went to the Fringe Festival for 2 projects on that matter. Antigone and Arabian Tragedy and The Blue Box, Memoirs of a Children, which was a huge success, 5-star reviews. And then came across the idea of putting on a musical.
Tell me
Alright.
that's
Musical.
I think that's an interesting thing.
See, I
to
think
do.
musicals are perhaps one of the most challenging.
They
Mark
are
me if
very
I'm wrong,
challenging,
honestly. I think
yeah.
they're very
They are.
challenging.
It's
Especially
it's
when
why-
you have
why I
to
say
sing
the-
yourself, I think.
Well, we had a production done in 2014 called Evita.
Evita.
Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice, of course, Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. So it was a great cast, One World, and they cast me as Che, the storyteller.
Okay.
Not Che Guevara, but like kind of inspiration of Che Guevara
Right.
character,
Yeah.
but on stage. So that was 14, and I thought, wow, the energy of the audience is there. Actually, we were surprised,
And that
by
gave
the-
you kind of like
That's-
an insight like that's actually working out.
digging in deeper, and more of the now let's challenge a bit. So, recent came out in 2007 was Johnny Depp's Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. And I thought, yes, I heard the soundtrack as a kid. I remember seeing the Broadway on YouTube channel. So I thought, why don't we bring this show to Kuwait?
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd, which we done in 2016. It's all over on Google everywhere you can find. I thought, okay, this is going to be something challenging, but it was a possibility not just as a performer, but also like being an artistic director with
Yeah.
co-directing along with Allison, but at the same time being a producer. So I thought this is a project I was so eager to try to
Yeah.
put it on as much as I can with the effort. At the same time, while I was graduating from university, so I got
That's a
clashed
lot of time
between
balance,
the
time
examination,
management.
graduation,
Yeah.
and putting on this show.
A lot of stress.
A lot of stress,
a lot
but
of
it was a
stress.
challenge. It was a challenge. It was difficult at first because to find the right voice, because you're taking something that's like Stephen Sondheim, which is a challenging find to sing in Kuwait. Which you're talking about West Side Story, Into the Woods,
wow.
Gypsy, those kind of
Those
melodies,
yeah,
voices,
classicals.
which is the classical, which we, alhamdulillah, we managed to get an audition, getting the last lot of cast coming into the audition room, have that voice. So I was like, where were you this whole time? I was
Right.
like, completely shocked by that. And we went and the parts, and then I played Sweeney. And we had a wonderful music director, Richard Bushman, with Harriet Bushman,
Yeah.
with her band, Ahmadi Music Group, the collaboration with One World, and the production side, the stage. We performed at Discovery Mall Theatre. If you all remember that place, it was such a stand-up comedy area at the time,
Okay.
which we turned the entire theatre into a Fleet Street of London. which
And this
much more
again
took-
is in Kuwait. We're talking.
we were in
Yeah,
Kuwait.
we're
That was
in
all
Kuwait.
part of
You're
Kuwait.
just talking about things. It's not my field, so I'm like,
No, but
this
like
must
it's
be in Europe.
suddenly
right?
like no, it sounds like in Europe, but
sounds
it's
like it's
actually
in
it was in
But
Kuwait the
the-
entire time.
Do we have a fan base for live theater Shakespearean style in Kuwait?
Well, there was years ago called the Shakespeare It's like the theater Shakespeare Company done by Alison Price, but then we went to now to become One World Shakespeare Company,
Okay.
which is part of Allison, and Allison and
back
I
to
would
the fan
collaborate.
base question: do we have the need for it in Kuwait? Do we have the market for it in Kuwait?
The literature world is starting to grow.
Starting to grow.
Very fast. I mean, we're getting a lot of students coming in who are just fascinated with
All
storytelling.
these plays are in English.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all the plays are in English, and
Why do you think there's a growing demand for it?
it's something to do with the humanity. Humanitarian, like Shakespeare, what I like
a
about
lot
him
of emotion.
is a lot of emotion and
Yeah.
understands humans' identities.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's something about his plays that really talk to resonant to the audience, relevant to the audience today.
I see.
Yeah.
So perhaps if you don't, mind, it's something related exactly like when we're talking about acting. Again, mark me if I'm wrong, but I think besides learning about the role itself, I think it also helps you learn about yourself.
That's right.
So perhaps if we can dig deeper into that side, like what does it help? You
Let's
learn?
give you an example. One of them. After Sweeney
Yeah.
was done, I thought that was it. My career was done.
That's it. That's the
Why?
last. That's the last.
That's was as you call the Untold. I thought like I've done the theater, I've done the mass what I
Oh,
can.
you're
the
saying this is
musical.
the highest.
This is the
you would-
kind of the highest, as you
This is
say.
the top of the mountain.
This is top of the mountain.
Let's call it a day.
Let's call it a day for about nearly a year and a half.
Okay, and then what
I
happened?
was doing other projects. I was working
Okay.
on like with my brother with the short films. I was doing other things, and I was trying to avoid the theater for a while
Okay.
because it's like, how can I compete with that?
How can I do something bigger?
Which
than
was what
that?
Sweeney Todd, which is like
Yeah.
the
And then
massive
you did
challenge,
do something bigger.
which came in 2019. I think yes, I was given a chance to help backstage with Jabba Culture Center, collaboration with 59 Production and Mr. Hayek called Abiyad wa Aswad,
Yeah.
which is a dear friend of mine, like a stage leader background. And I felt that present in that room is like, oh my God, how much I missed that for nearly a year and a half
Wow.
away. Yeah, and he just back away. And then another project came
Yeah.
along the line was Mudhakkarat Bahar, Memoirs of a Sailor, which is done by Jack, 59 Production. I thought that was it. Allison called and said the embassy are looking to put on 107, I think it's 125th, 130th anniversary of Kuwait and Britain. Would you be interested to do Shakespeare's the 37 scenes?
And you said.
And I said, of course obviously. Obviously, it's like, why not? And plus, it's going to be like an anniversary between Kuwait and British relation. I thought, great. We had about 35 cast came into that room, and scene by scene of every tragedy, comedy, from sonnets to music. Great. It was a great experience. And then I thought, we found the person who can play this part, which was Yusuf al-Nasr. And I knew him for about many years. I thought, do you think it's ready for him to play Hamlet? Alice and I, we thought about it for a while, and I said yes. And that was the beginning of something completely new. I said to myself, great, Sweeney was an experience. The Jabra Culture Center was an experiment. Doing the embassy, Shakespeare in the Park was amazing.
Yeah.
Now is something to take a different toll.
Right.
So Hamlet was a dream project of mine. Yusuf Nasr, perfect. Dar al Athar, perfect.
Right.
Culture Center. Let's create that.
Right.
And they offered, it's like, why don't you do something for the culture season? Great. Why don't I do? So I proposed the idea of Hamlet, Shakespeare, but set it in a much more
Modern time.
modern time
I like
mental
that.
asylum.
Adopted. Yeah.
All right.
Adapted to the modern
Yeah.
times. Nice.
Adapted to the modern time mental asylum. And I've always been fascinated with that particular theme.
Is that part of theater though? Kind of like to adapt it to kind of like modern, where you can
It's-
change things. to
Yeah,
make
you
it
can
more-
modernize tales and stuff.
Before then, it wasn't as part of the tradition, but now the generation
It's
has changed
more
for the last
accepted, yeah.
40, 50 years. You can actually
Because especially you want
modernize
to
it.
retell the same story, but in our time with the new society,
That's right.
viewpoints and
Exactly.
all that, right? But I want to shift our focus a little bit to the film industry. Why do you think we still don't have a proper film industry in Kuwait? We have all the talents. We got you. I'm here. What's missing? Why can't we make a blockbuster tomorrow?
I'm not in a position for that, but I can tell you that it's starting to develop in a way, but
Yeah.
it's taking its time.
It's taking its sweet time, my friend.
I think it's more of the attention of what story to be told.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very pleased when The Exchange came out, which
Yes.
became part of the
Yeah.
original Netflix series, which had done amazing work. Again, I think Kuwait is starting to pick up what is now with the TV series.
Right.
Now the film should become.
Yes.
I mean, the last thing we ever saw was, to me, of course, was Bessia Bahar was like one of the
Yeah.
concept of film,
Right.
which is purely genius at first. But looking back now and looking at the recent work, we are starting to pick up. We are getting to that field of
Thankfully, I think also there's a hard demand, growing demand at the same time.
That's
so
right.
that's like
This brings me back to what you said, stories to tell.
yes,
The script is the superstar of any show or production.
Yeah.
You agree?
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. That's just more of the to tell every time. There's once a director, John Carpenter, said once, "What do you need in industry? A good story, and good story."
Good story. I love that. I love
But
that.
how do you get? So the question is, how do you get to a point where you write this great story lines.
You gotta hit those emotions, in that story.
Honestly, how do you? And the
connect.
question I have, from personal perspective, like, how do you put yourself into all these different perspectives of the
How to write different characters,
How
different
do you-
voices. That's a
Well,
skill.
look, as a writer, because I mostly adapt, so I take the classics and I try to adapt it to much more relevant to today's society.
Rather than complete fiction.
There are times I do, and my Untold thing, but I recently during the COVID, I wrote down to nearly 7 to 8 new work materials during the COVID time. So we
Lots
had
of free time to
lots
write.
of free time to write,
And
as I
that's
say.
great that
so
you
But
we're
where
can
do
still
you get
write
the
as
inspiration
well.
from? Like, if you're
Yeah.
sitting at home in COVID, where do you get the inspiration from? You
Well-
must read something, watch something.
mainly what
Apocalypse
comes to
itself was inspiring.
That's
a lot
true.
of stories.
I mean, of course, articles, news, stories, recent website or something that suddenly an unexpected turn.
Yeah.
And there's like research development. You find something that's quite fascinated, and something you go back to your childhood, something that you were aware of it but
Yeah,
weren't understood. But now, as you're getting older, you somehow making it more sense to you
Yeah.
as it does. So I thought, okay, this is something now should be relevant to talk about,
Yeah.
or just getting the stories out
Right.
for the product itself, for the audience to see and witness these kind of new world of fictionalized stories. I mean, we do have creativity, and I've seen a lot. I've been to workshops in Kuwait, been seeing writers clubs. I've seen many group of young talents, mashallah, yani, have ideas, have putting on tape.
It's great to see them, honestly. I'm proud to see that Kuwait is at
Yeah.
least investing in the
Absolutely.
youth in this
The
field.
youth, yes. And speaking of the youth, since we're reaching about the end of our episode, an advice to young creatives, people who aspire to be filmmakers, actors.
One thing what I experience, and I keep telling to my fellow students, drama students as well, don't give up.
Absolutely.
There are
Number one
times
rule.
you will go into that dark tone, but there's always a way from the light. Come forward to your stories.
There's always light.
There's
at the end of
always
the
light
tunnel.
in the end of the tunnel.
And it's a
Totally agree with
challenging tunnel. to be
There's a
honest.
challenging
It's
tunnel.
a
Very,
very challenging tunnel.
very, very challenging tunnel.
Very challenging.
Yeah.
Just do the best you work. Yes, there are routes. You have to face yourself. There will be a lot of rejections. There'll be rejection to rejection to rejection until one person
part of the
realizes,
game.
yes, we approve you.
It's part of the
Right.
game, I
It's
guess.
part of being
That
accepted and
gives you
part of
that
learning
opportunity,
ability.
yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that, honestly.
Thank
It's
you
a
for your
beautiful
time.
advice.
Most
Really, really
welcome.
appreciate it.
Most welcome.
And thank you for your time to being on the Untold. And I hope all
Thank
the
you so
little
much.
kind of like actors, producers, directors, and the whole list goes on, they can be inspired from your story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again. We'll wrap up this episode now, and we'll come back for the final wrap up. Thank you.
What a beautiful conversation we
Not
just
my
had.
world. Not my world. It's
Not your world. Not your world.
Interesting, but not my world.
Isn't it interesting?
That's very interesting. He definitely is very
You know,
passionate, and I love the fact.
path he took from the beginning
Exactly.
to where he is
Exactly.
today, and the future of the industry.
Exactly. As they say, I think that if it's meant to be, then it'll find its way around. And I think he went into something, and then he left it for a while, came back into it,
Yeah.
and then obviously he's doing great things and winning a lot of awards. I mean, definitely
There's
people can take
a
a thing or
lot
two
to
from
look
it.
forward to.
100%.
He is quite the creative.
Yeah, yeah.
And I cannot wait to see what else he comes up with in the future.
Hopefully.
Well,
All right.
tune in every day right here to The Untold for more guests and interesting stories that haven't been told, but after this show, they would have been
Told.
told.